Hi there, this is Dr. Tracy Jones. And on today's Tremendous Leadership Podcast, we are going to talk with a tremendous leader, Gerry Wevodau. Gerry is an entrepreneur. He built his health benefits and insurance business. He's a pilot and one of our tremendous authors. So stay tuned.
You're listening to Tremendous Leadership with Dr. Tracy Jones.
Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Tracy Jones. Welcome to the Tremendous Leadership Podcast, Leaders on Leadership, where we talk about leaders in various organizations and entities and what that took them to pay the price of leadership. So today, as I said, we are super excited to have dear friend and local leader in the Central PA region, Gerry Wevodau. Gerry has been an active professional in Central Pennsylvania insurance community since 1989. He's able to draw on his extensive experience to provide clients with innovative solutions with a personalized, hands-on approach. Gerry is an instrument-rated private pilot who enjoys flying for business and personal enjoyment since 1999. And when we go global, he'll be my pilot for the Tremendous Leadership. We'll get a plane with a kicking man on it. He's also a secondary black belt in Taekwondo, been married to his beautiful, lovely wife, Yvette, since 1984, has 3 adult children, and Gerry is also a published author. His book, Setting a True Course, we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end, and we will have links to that. He's one of our tremendous authors, so you know he's super duper tremendous. Gerry, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Absolutely. And do you want to tell them real quickly about your company and what you do, Gerry?
Yeah, we're a local owned. It's my daughter and I, family-owned business. We help businesses in the Central Pennsylvania area with medical insurance benefits. So our typical clients, anywhere from a small mom and pop business, our largest client has over 1,000 employees.
Wow.
But in America, 95% of privately held businesses have less than 100. So I'd say most of them are in that 20 to 100 space.
Awesome. And it's nice to have you on here because small businesses are the backbone of the U.S. economy. And so I love probably a lot of people listening to this are small business owners, entrepreneurs. So really interested to get, because that is a whole different style of leadership than if you're in a big bureaucracy that has a lot of resources and a lot of bailout and stuff like that. So Gerry, you knew my father, and he wrote a little booklet called The Price of Leadership. It was one of his more poignant speeches because he really talked about the tougher side of leadership and the price that leaders have to pay. And so that's what we really want to unpack today with your experience as to the price that leaders have to pay. The first price that he talked about in the price of leadership was loneliness. And my father talks about how sometimes leaders are just going to have to set the pace for others to follow, and they may not be following right away. And he would always joke and say that you never see a monument in a park dedicated to a committee. So you know what? It's lonely at the top. So Gerry, can you tell me what it means to be lonely as a leader, if there's times you have been through that, and what you would encourage other leaders if they are going through that?
That is something that I think is a necessary part of being a leader, unfortunately, because one thing I learned early in my career is you can't please everybody. Mm-hmm. And when that's the case, you have to make tough decisions. And when you make tough decisions, not everybody's going to agree with those decisions. And I shared with you briefly before we started, I was reading your dad's book again, and I was reading Life is Tremendous again recently this year, and just brings through some new thoughts. But for me, I think God conditioned me to be independent from a young age. And I write about that a little bit in my book. I have 2 older brothers and a younger sister. And I was at the tail end of 3 boys, and being at that age where I was 4 years younger or 5 years younger than the oldest and 2 years younger than the next one, I had to kind of learn to do a lot of things on my own. Mm-hmm. So I think it was just sort of inbred into me by the way I grew up. Not that I had a terrible life growing up. It was great. But that's how far back I can remember. But in the insurance business, as your dad was, it's tough because you can only eat what you kill, and you got to go out there every week. And it's not, what did you do for me last week? It's, what have you done for me lately? And I had to learn through that process. It's very lonely most people don't want to talk to insurance people. And if you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. So I had to learn early on that I just had to dig and grind and get in the trenches. And I looked at life more as a way to encourage other people, almost like a ministry, where I would just try to be available, faithful and available to do what God had for me that day. And it's interesting. I write about that again in my book too. I don't want to keep talking about my book, but life just unfolds, and you have circumstances and instances and people that you meet that you never thought you would meet. And I'm constantly meeting new people. And it's kind of, I want to call it divine, because God works those meetings out. He knew we were going to meet before I did. So I'm always open to those. But it is lonely, because if you always had a great fan base and everybody thought you did everything right, you wouldn't be lonely. You'd have a lot of yes people. And I think I heard that on your other podcast. We've all been around those yes people who just tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear.
Right. And we're going to talk about that in the third price of abandonment. And, you know, that's so funny. I heard this joke about people that would go to RV camp on vacation would put up a life insurance sales thing on their trailer so people wouldn't bother them, kind of thing. So, and, you know, I love that. You can only eat what you kill. And so I think, as you said, because I sold door to door, I've had a little bit of time in sales.
Right.
There's certain career fields, probably tax collectors, dentists, you know, certain career fields that it is more lonely, because people are like, no, I don't need to hear that. And yeah, you need to hear it. You better be insuranced up, because you don't know when this can happen. So yeah, I think that was part of Dad's with the insurance field. Why he was so funny to people is because in the insurance field, if you're not working for a commission, I mean, that is almost like a desperation kind of thing, where you got to make it. And you can't come home and cry to your wife or your family, because you got to bring home the bacon. And what would Dad say? He'd say, look, honey, man of the month. And she'd say, where's the check, or something like that.
Right. I used to joke around. My wife wouldn't let me in the door without applications and checks.
Yeah.
They'd go back out and keep working.
Go back out there. And Dad would say he made a promise. If he didn't sell a policy, he'd buy one. And then after about 2 months of that, he's like, I got to get out there. I got to hustle. I got to sell. So interesting. All right. Well, thank you for that on the loneliness. And I love that. One of our other guests today had talked about, she was the oldest of 9 kids. So she had to learn to be independent and stand up a lot. So a lot of that is coded from when we're younger, that you're just, you know, kind of in environments. And that's why when we shelter younger kids too much and don't let them stand up on their independence and learn, it's okay to be alone. Otherwise, boy, when you get to be an adult, that can be crippling. You know, if you're not ready for it.
I think so too. You make a very, very valid point. We live in a time when parents, God bless them, they want to raise their kids right, but they try to shelter them from all the pain and heartache of life. And really, pain and heartache and discouragement and those things that we're going to talk about actually help shape you and can make you better, because it's either that or you go the other way.
Right. Absolutely.
Just learn how to adapt. It makes you very strong and adaptable.
Yeah.
Because life isn't easy.
No. Well, what's that? Whenever somebody says life is hard, compared to what? What's the alternative? You know?
You're right.
I don't know. All right. So the next price he talked about is weariness. And he said that my dad said, if you're going to be doing anything worthwhile, you're always going to be surrounded by people who will never be doing their share and those who do more. So how do you handle this gap? I mean, I know we have our own intrinsic motivation, Gerry. That's why why you're on this show, because we are tenacious as all get out.
Right.
But how do you deal with it as a leader when you're trying to run an organization and there is a certain weariness that comes with continually trying to get people to do the right thing? Talk to me about that.
Oh boy, that's exhausting.
It's a different weariness, isn't it? It's not like weariness, I love my work, I'm dog tired, but it's a different weariness, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the kind of weariness where you kind of get to the end of your rope and you just have to dig deeper. I learned a lot personally from something that I love to do. I started doing about 25 years ago was mountaineering, hiking mountains, climbing high points, and I've climbed 35 of the 50 state high points. And it's amazing what you can tell your body to do with your mind. If you listen to your body wants to quit. It doesn't want to go past that point of physical exhaustion. And I think work is the same way. Sometimes you get mentally weary, you get emotionally weary, you get worn out. And you just have to constantly refresh yourself each day. And for me, it's my faith. I start out every day with some quiet time for about an hour. I read, I pray, I study. And not just scripture. I mean, I start the day out with scripture. That's my first thing, and a little Bible study, and I pray. But then I'm always reading business books, sometimes leadership books, sometimes political type books, always learning, always growing. And what that does is that feeds your mind and helps feed your soul. And then I usually go out physically and start the day out with a walk and clear my mind. But that kind of helps me kind of get through the weariness of it. I tend to be one of those people, and I think it's not uncommon for some leaders. You have to find something that works for you to be your best when you're working. And even for me, there's some days where it's like I'll work a few hours and I just want to go jump on the motorcycle and go for a long ride, clear my head, or meet up with a friend and play 9 holes of golf or whatever it is that you need to do to constantly refresh yourself, because weariness is just part of the battle.
Yes.
And if we look at our journey as more of a marathon instead of a 100-yard dash, we can treat ourselves accordingly. And, you know, it's not just one battle, it's a whole war that you're going through. So you do have to kind of you have to take care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually.
I love it. You said it. Weariness is part of the journey. I mean, so if you're out there and you're a leader and you're like, I'm doing it wrong. No, you're not. Even Jesus got weary. We're physical. And I love that. You keep saying the word refresh, whether it's a people, whether it's outdoors, whether it's a hobby, whether it's friendship, just take the time to refresh. Because if you are starting to run low on your relational tank or your physical tank, you have to refresh. And, you know, those examples you gave are all phenomenal examples of that. So thank you, Gerry. The third price that he talked about, and you alluded to this in the beginning, he calls it abandonment. And he always says that we need to abandon what we like to think about and what we want to think about. And we need to think about what we ought to think about and we need to think about. So how do you stay focused? It's a busy world. Your industry is very, there's a lot of flux. There's a lot of different regulations. There's a lot of different things probably that you could spin off to. How do you stay focused on what you need to stay focused on and abandon the rest of it?
Well, I call that getting stuck in the weeds. It's really easy to get stuck in the weeds and lose your focus. I try to put the blinders on sometimes and just buckle down with what needs to be done that day. And I know that's easier said than done because there's a lot of distractions that come in every day.
Right.
There's a lot of needs that pop up. There's a lot of drama that happens in life, whether it's personal drama with family members. We have 3 kids, and there's always something to deal with. They're all adults, and we have grandkids, which is great at this phase versus when they were younger. And I'm thankful I have a great team member, and my wife will be married 36 years this September if she still hangs on to me for a few more months. But you know, I think it's important. The people in your life are important. And I've heard some of your talks and I've heard other talks. It is important to be surrounded by good people, whether they're people in your tribe, your employees, or if you're not an employer, you know, your boss, people that support you and encourage you. You're not always going to agree with each other. You're not going to always see things eye to eye. But I think to stay focused is really important. It's hard. And I think this trial that we've been through recently with coronavirus is one of those things that we're going to come out of. We're going to realize maybe I don't need everything I thought I needed before. Business is going to be done differently. We're doing a lot more of these Zoom meetings, which they're fun, but I miss the face-to-face interaction, being a handshaker and a hugger and somebody that goes out and meets people. But I think you just have to start out each day with a focus and a plan on what you do and try to execute that plan. But what I've also found, in all fairness, and some people listening to this might agree with this, they may not, we have our planner and our schedule, and that's what we say we're going to do, and then there's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
They're not always the same thing. But I think if we just do everything we can, the best we can do it each day, and just focus on that. If not, put it at the top of the list for the next day.
Right.
So it doesn't get shoved under the rug or forgotten about.
Right. So you're pretty diligent about, on a daily basis, kind of going back through and kind of assessing where you've been and what you need to reprioritize and do for the next day.
Right. That's what I try to do. I mean, there's no easy answer to it, I don't think.
No, it's work. Yeah.
Yeah. Life's got a lot of distractions. And I think it's hard today. A lot of working moms. I know you grew up in a more different time, and I did too. Our moms stayed at home. Mm-hmm. I've read about your life growing up a little bit. I know what my life was growing up. It's just different. Mm-hmm. And a lot of moms are working today, and they got to juggle that. And I respect that. Mm-hmm. We have some working moms that work for us, mm-hmm. and I don't know how they do it.
All right.
To be honest with you, honestly, they have to really double down and get things done, because a lot of them work very well at work, and then they have to go home and be mom. Mm-hmm.
Well, it is interesting with what's been going on the past couple months. It really has given everybody kind of a chance to get clear on, okay, what do I need to spend my time doing? What is occupying my time? And are there different ways that I can do it? And I'm always a huge fan of that.
Right.
I still think meetings have to resume and will resume. There's still something about being around people, and we are coded for attachment, and this is great, but this is not real attachment. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
And we need that. We need that. We're made for that. And so I do look forward to bringing that back. But you still got to be abandoned to the main thing is to keep the main thing. And otherwise, especially as a small business owners, resources aren't infinite, and you start kind of running down rabbit holes, or what am I going to do? Or this person's doing that. And I don't know if you've ever, as you were deciding what your business wanted to be, did you ever have any trouble in the beginning deciding exactly where you wanted to focus and what you wanted your niche to be?
Well, what do I want to do when I grow up? I'm still trying to figure that out.
Good. People need to hear that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 30 years in the business, and I'm still working on it.
Amen, brother.
This is, I got in this business really out of necessity. And it just turned out to be a great opportunity for a young guy. I was a month away from being 18 when I married my wife. So I still remember my dad had to go to the courthouse and sign for me to get married because I was underage. And so we started out very young, high school education, and I say I've graduated summa cum laude from the School of Hard Knocks, mm-hmm. like some people. But I've had a lot of unique life experiences, business experiences, had a lot of good mentors in business. And this business has been extremely good to me and my family. I've been able to make a great living, help our kids get a good education, buy a home, and start this little business. We're never going to be the biggest, but we always try to do the best we can to serve our clients. And we're kind of a boutique operation in the way we do things. And the people who like us, and those who don't, they'll do business with somebody else.
Right.
There's enough business out there for everybody. But really, I think what it boils down to a lot of times is that personal connection that you make with people over time. Because mm-hmm. anybody can sell you a product and do the transaction. Mm-hmm. And in our industry, it changed a whole lot in the last decade since the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, came out, and a lot of the services and things that we were forced to start to offer. And it's interesting. I'm seeing the same thing right now with my own accountant. He's a client, small business right down the street. And with all these like paycheck protection programs and different things coming out from the government, they're now having to do a lot more than just doing your taxes mm-hmm. and doing your bookwork and things like that. So it's going that extra mile that sets you apart a little bit. But, this is a very unique business, and I think I was made for it. Obviously, it's a little too late to go back now. I've painted myself into a corner with it. But now it's fun because after 30 years, I've dug enough ditches that I've built a nice little pile of sand. I keep growing and growing and growing. And
Nice.
I have a daughter involved in the business to kind of transition to, and I want to work, believe it or not, another at least 20 years. My goal is to make it 50 years in the business. And then I'll think about retiring maybe, or slowing down. I'm slowing down a little bit more each day, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I want to stay involved with it, stay active, use my mind, use the 30 years of experience to help her to get to the next level and help some other people become successful.
I love that.
That's where I'm at right now in life.
And why quit now? You're just, as Dad would say,
Oh my
we're just
God.
starting to figure it out. Why on earth would I slow down now?
It's taken me 30 years to figure
It's
it out.
finally
I might as well
fun.
keep going.
Hey,
It's funny. You've read this before, but I want to. Hopefully, I can find it. I was just reading in your dad's book.
Uh-huh.
I love this, and I heard you say this, so I'm sorry for repeating it.
No, go ahead.
One of my favorite stories. It was about leaders must be growing. We are aware that growth requires growing pains, and that growth so often comes through failure. A young fellow asked an old timer how he became successful. You already know this story, right? The old timer replied, "Good judgment." The young fellow then asked, "How did you get that?" The old timer replied, "Experience." The young fellow asked again, "Well, how did you get that?" The old timer replied, "Poor judgment." And that's a great story for everybody.
Yeah.
And I could listen to that almost every day because that's just truth.
It is.
To hear. And your dad used a lot of humor, and you know that, in his getting points across. And that humor stuck in your mind. I still hear him saying that himself 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We used to get together almost 30 years ago and have Bible studies, and I'd go in there young, defeated, worn out, wanted to cry on Charlie's shoulder, and he didn't want to hear none of that. You know your dad. He would grab me by the arm, and I'm a big man like he is, 6'4", and he would put me down on my knees. He goes, "Let's get down on our knees. We're going to pray. We're going to pray right here, right now." I mean, how are you going to do it? And he goes, "I'll go first, then you go."
Right.
So he modeled it. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about that, he just modeled how to talk to God.
Mm-hmm.
And if he wouldn't do that, he would pull out a book and he'd say, "Read this to me."
Mm-hmm. And
I'd start reading that book. And 10 minutes, 5 minutes into it, I'd be like, "What am I whining about?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
thumb suckers, there's no thumb
No
suckers.
thumbs up. Right. I mean, the biggest thing that he helped people abandon was their stinking thinking. Because faith and fear can't coexist.
That's right.
And he was so good. He was so, like in your face. And some people are like, "Well, that's me." And he would it was like an emotional slap, like, "Stop it." And it's like,
you get the physical slap too sometimes.
Physical slap too. And when I first came back to run the business, I would have men call me and say, "Your father chewed the living daylights out of me." And I'm like, "Okay." And they're like, "And thank God he did, because he saved my life." And I'm like, "Okay." But I mean, we just need that tough love, because when we're wallowing in our own pity party, somebody needs to come in and just give you a good kick with love. And that's what he did. You had better abandon your whining and thumb suck. Zero tolerance for that.
It doesn't do any good.
It'll kill you, and it'll ruin everybody around you. I mean, people can't stand it. Yeah, it's the old they say, misery loves company, but the company doesn't love misery. Shut up. Stop sucking. Yeah, read this book. I don't want to hear any more about what
you got to be an overcomer. It's
yeah.
And we all have problems. I mean, we have ups, downs, challenges. We've got some challenges going on right now that I don't even want to get into. But, it's interesting. You got to deal with them from a intellectual, factual way, and not get wrapped up in the emotion of it. And, when you're a leader, a lot of times I'm going to use two adjectives every leader has already experienced. And if you haven't, you're not a leader yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's hurt and disappointment.
Yeah.
And that ties into everything that you're saying. And, when you go through those things where you're hurt and you're disappointed, it usually involves people.
Yeah.
Usually involves a misunderstanding of how things are supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to forgive them and to have the right attitude about it, and really, put the results in God's hands, because maybe He's working in their heart, in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, He's doing something in our lives too, and we're not understanding totally. But again, that's where our faith comes in, and we just trust Him for good things to come out of it.
Right.
But
Right.
hurt and disappointment is just tied up with that weariness, abandonment, loneliness.
Right. Well, and I like I said, I heard this speech when I was little. So I was so glad I did, because when I started, my first leadership job as a shift supervisor in fast food, I always realized, hey, if you got blowback, now, yeah, you can always improve as a leader, but some of it is just par for the course. It's how you get developed as a leader. So,
Right.
but you're right. But he was always laughing about it and always saying, hey, people may hurt me, but I've hurt them too. And so as long as you're evolving and just continuing on the path,
Right.
and laughing, getting people to laugh at their
Yeah.
heartaches.
Yeah. And there's no perfection. I mean, we're human beings.
Right.
We're
Right.
human beings. And very normal to get exhausted and worn out and want to walk away. And it's funny. When I don't quit as much as I used to. I used to quit a lot. I was like, I quit. I hate this.
Me too.
I don't want to do this.
I did the same thing.
My wife would start cheering me on. She was my little cheerleader. And I think in middle school, when she was in 7th grade, going to a private Christian school wearing culottes or whatever they wore, they couldn't show off too much leg. She would do these cheers, and it was like, you can do it, put your mind to it, buckle down, do it, do it, do it. And she'd do this cheer, and I would start cracking up laughing because it was so cute. Yeah. And, she's in her 50s now. She's still cute when she does it.
She is. She's adorable. Oh, I love it.
It's great to have somebody on your team who wants to see you succeed. Right. And I think that's important too, to have the right people around you. Because, some people come and go. It's not all bad when they go. What's that say? Some people are a blessing when they come into the room, and others are a blessing when they leave.
When they leave, yes.
But they're going through their phase in life and everything too. But you definitely don't want to be around toxic people either. That's not good either.
Right.
And there's an adage in business today about hiring slow and firing fast. We have done the opposite, where we hired too quickly, and then we held on to people way longer than we should have.
I know.
And so you learn those things
Yeah.
too in life when you're in business. But we're trying to be more mindful of that. Right now we're candidating 3 different people and having them take assessment exams and seeing if they're a good fit, and interviewing and trying to be very mindful about the right choices, because you don't want to mess with people's lives either,
Right. Absolutely.
You want to be a blessing to them. You don't want to, just use their time up and throw them away.
Yeah. And thank you for being transparent with that, because I think any leader out there will say, listen, I haven't always been the best when it comes to picking people. I haven't always brought the best fit in, nor brought out the best in other people. So I really appreciate you sharing that. The last point that he talks about is vision. And a lot of people listening may think that vision is kind of this esoteric, you're like this big brain, a Steve Jobs, or, a Patton or whatever, where you just see things nobody else can see. But what Dad talks about in The Price of Leadership is vision is just seeing what needs to be done, which most of us can at least see that, and then doing it. So there's this recognition, but also this intentionality. So can you share with me, how do you dial in your vision? How do you get these epiphanies, or how do you stay focused on that or inspire that?
That's a great question. I know I sound like a broken record, but being a follower of Christ, there's a scripture that says, without a vision, people perish.
Right.
And part of my daily prayer is to ask for wisdom. And I think I heard you say in a previous podcast that you read Proverbs every day. Mm-hmm. I've read Proverbs for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I'll read all kinds of scripture, and then I'm like, okay, what proverb am I going to read? I usually pick the day. Like if today's the 8th, I'll go to Proverbs
31
8.
Proverbs.
31 Proverbs, one for every day.
Yep.
And there's always something in there for me. But see, God has an endless supply of wisdom.
Uh-huh.
All we have to do is keep asking for it.
Right.
And so I constantly am asking for wisdom and insight, understanding. So I understand the people I work with better, the clients that we serve better, what to do in certain scenarios, situations that we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to give credit to my faith from a vision standpoint, because God puts opportunities in front of you through people, through circumstances. And a lot of times it's just taking those opportunities that he has set before me and following through with it and doing, just putting feet to it and making it work. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Leaders have to do everything. Mm-hmm. You know what I was doing before I got on with you? I was running around changing the air filters in the air conditioning systems here.
I love it.
I'm like,
thank you for that too.
These haven't been changed since like November.
You could have blown the building up.
Oh, well, yeah. So anyways, we'll be cleaning clean air this week.
I like it. Yes, it was getting a little hazy.
Take out the trash. You do everything, That's the way
I like
it is
that too.
Business,
And I appreciate you saying that, because sometimes people are like, well, no. You should delegate that to people. And I'm like, look, it's not that I have a problem with delegation. It's just as a leader sometimes, and I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem doing my own administration. Now, if it's stopping me from growing the business or focusing on things I need to, but like you, we kind of do it all. Right. And am I too good to do it?
When my team gets busy, I'm in there washing the coffee cups at the end of the day. Sometimes I'm taking the trash out, and they see the boss doing that. Guess what?
I know.
They'll do it.
I know.
I don't have to ask. I never ask anybody to do it. They just do it.
Yeah. I love it. So, Gerry, talk to me now. I want to wrap up with talking about your book and share with me. I love the first part of it, Setting a True Course Again, and we'll have the links to it. Show us a picture there. I love it. Talk to me about how you had a recognition early in your life about what you did and didn't want to do. And I think that's really incredible. And then you realized it was going to be work, but you realized something had to change. And you kind of saw your dad in different situations, and you kind of saw business people. And then tell me how you put two and two together.
Well, that's interesting. My dad was a fabulous guy in business, but he always worked for other people. Mm-hmm. He worked for a family-owned furniture store here in the area. They're still in business. He was in leadership there and management. But because it was retail, and now this was the 1970s and that era, they just got into where the blue laws went away and stores started to open on Sunday. Before that, they were always closed. Mm-hmm. I saw him work long hours. He wouldn't come home till sometimes after 9 o'clock at night. And, just as a kid growing up, you want to talk to your dad and have those conversations. Well, I'd try to wait up for him, and I'd always fall asleep. I'm still that person today. I fall asleep at 9 o'clock at night. I get up at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Man,
something about I
got to change my life. You're like the 10th interview that says that. I'm like, man, no more night out for Tracy. Let's go on.
Right. But anyways, I thought, you know what? When I grow up, I don't want to live like that. So when I got in, was being kind of candidated for insurance, a lot of it was life insurance, like your dad. And I'm like, I don't want to be out at night with my knees under kitchen tables and come home at 10 o'clock at night. Uh-huh. So I purposely went into the health insurance business, where you dealt with business people during the day. And I'd say early on, 80+% of my meetings were during the day. I'd probably have one a week at night, something like that. And now I never work at night. Mm-hmm. I'm home every day. So because we work with people in the business world. So that always kind of drove me. I knew what I didn't want to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true of a lot of people. They wind up doing something, whatever it is, because it's something they don't want to do.
Right.
So if you're given the options, you can do this, or this. We're like, I don't want these two. Well, that leaves this. Okay.
And that's okay. I mean, because a lot of people are like, find your purpose. And I'm like, I'm not sure what my purpose is. I know kind of what I don't want to do. And that's okay too. That can be as good a guiding principle as any sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Well, Gerry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
At this stage of life, I think my role in life is just to try to encourage the people I come in contact with, that whether that's an acquaintance, a client, a friend, a family member, be an encouragement to them, and then also just be open to those opportunities that I have every day to do that and glorify God in what we do.
Beautiful.
Are we perfect? No, but we just get up every day and do the best that we can do.
Yeah. Well, you're an encouragement to me and so many others.
Good.
And you were to my dad, and my mother loved you, and you have been such a supporter to me. And I'm so thankful to still have you in our tremendous sphere. Anything else you want to share with our listeners on the price of leadership and what you kind of discovered about leadership?
Well, I'm learning that our next generation is getting ready for this now too. I see it in my own daughter, Emily. She's very involved in the local SHRM chapter. She's a vice president, and she's becoming a leader as well. And in about 7 years, we'll be a woman-owned business because she's earning more shares of the company every year. And that's great. I want to see that. And I'm impressed with a lot of the, and this is no disrespect to all the men out there that have built businesses and companies, but I'm really impressed with the young women and the women in leadership in business today. In our business, a lot of our clients are women, and we work in a lot with the human resources people, and there's some business owners that are women, and I'm just super impressed with the dynamics that they bring to the business world and business relationships. So I'm kind of excited to see the next chapter, even in our own company, and where it goes with that, with Emily being at the leadership helm. And I'm just trying to be an encouragement to her, mentor her along here a little bit, and support her. That's how I feel like that's my next chapter in life. I feel like I'm entering the fourth quarter. I'm not to overtime yet. That's later.
Right. I love that.
I'm getting, third quarter's over. I'm entering the fourth quarter. What can I do?
Yeah. Finish strong. And as a daughter picking up a second generation business from a male founder, I recognize what you're doing with her, and it's really encouraging to see. So keep it up.
So I get her around people like you, leaders, women leaders, so she can see. And, it's amazing how she's blossomed. And I see the fire in her eyes and her belly. She's got it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
She's the one.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, it's wonderful as a business owner to really know who you're going to hand the reins to. It just allows you. That's a whole nother topic, but I'm so glad you have that because, it is all God's anyways. And if it ends after the first generation, that's fine. But when you've got somebody you can work alongside to pass the baton to, that's really a true blessing.
It is.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Gerry, how do people get a hold of you? Where can they get in touch with you?
They just look us up online at wevins.com for Wevodau Insurance, wevins.com.
Okay.
All our information's on there.
Good. And you're located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Do you service clients other areas in Pennsylvania, or where you're primarily?
Yeah, well, we go down as far as the Maryland line, and I've got clients that are 2 hours northwest of here. So anywhere within, an hour and a half, 2 hours of central Pennsylvania. We're actually in Wormleysburg, and I'm looking at the state capitol right now through my.
That's right. You're across the river. That's right.
Yep.
Beautiful place. All right, Gerry. Well, thank you so much, brother, friend, author, leader extraordinaire, insurance man that made a living, lived on those I love it.
Amen.
And pilot, Harley rider, you name it. You're everything. You're Buckaroo Banzai. You're a Renaissance
I am what I am.
Well, thank you for sharing how you grew your business, how you grew your life, how you grew your faith. And I'm just blessed to know you so much, Gerry.
Blessed to know you too, Tracy.
Absolutely.
I love and appreciate it.
Rest of the day. Thanks everybody for listening. Follow the links. Get in touch with Gerry. Get in touch with us. You can pick up his book too at tremendousleadership.com. Reach out to Gerry. He also loves to speak and share. So thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Tremendous Leadership with Dr. Tracy Jones. Find out more about Dr. Jones at www.tremendousleadership.com. If you've been ignited by something you heard in this episode, let us know by leaving a review for Tremendous Leadership wherever you listen to podcasts, or by sending us a message through www.tremendousleadership.com.